Welcome to Detailing with Mark. Today I'm driving my 2021 Model 3 Standard Range Plus from the Bay Area to Los Angeles. I've charged it to full, 259 miles, and I only plan to supercharge once. Will I make it? I'm nervous, but excited. Let's do it! Look at the range. I've been gone like 10 minutes maybe. I've gone from 259 to 234. Why is that? Well, I went up a series of huge hills. They just drained the battery unbelievably. So now we're getting into some downhill slopes, which will hopefully put some of that battery charge back. But yeah, it's dicey taking road trips, especially with lots of hills, because it's very unpredictable. A flat road trip is way more predictable, obviously. But if we watch here, we're at 234. On these downhills, the range won't decrease, and then on a good sized downhill, the range will actually increase a mile or two, which is great. So it's going to be an interesting experiment, that's for sure. So doing road trips in a Tesla is a little bit more challenging. The Teslas and all-electric cars get much worse range on the highway. Why is that? Well, number one, you're going higher speeds, there's a lot more wind resistance. Number two, the primary thing is you don't really take advantage of regenerative braking. So if you want to get, in my car, it's rated at 263 miles on a full charge. If you want to get that, and you can come close, you pretty much have to drive city, where you're rolling up to stoplights, using the regen to recharge the battery. A lot of braking involved, which the regen will handle for you, obviously. On the highway, you really don't have that. You can see here, we're wide open, doing 79 miles an hour. Unless you're going down a really steep hill, there's very little opportunity for the regen to kick in. So for those reasons, highway trips, you just get a lot worse range. So whatever the max charge is, or whatever my battery charge is, when I leave on the road trip, I will travel about 72% of that before I need to recharge. So it's a bit tricky, right? So my car, let's say just for the sake of rounding, my car has a max range of 260, right? That would tell you, in theory, if you drive it all the way to empty and then charge it all the way full, you'll have a total range of 520, right? That's plenty to get me to LA, which is 342 miles, right? In theory. If you multiply that by 0.72, you get about 375 miles of actual distance travel. So knowing that I can go 375 miles with a charge to full in the middle of the trip, that still only gives me a cushion of 30 miles, which makes me a little nervous. So my goal is roughly to supercharge the car midway, actually more than midway. So I basically want to drive this thing as close as I can to empty before I recharge it. And that's going to be about 200 miles. So my goal is to make it 200 miles to a supercharger, mostly empty, recharge it, and then go another 150 miles, which in theory should be doable. So I'm actually very confident that this will work, but I haven't done this before, and this is Tesla's shortest range vehicle, so it's an interesting test. So I'm already getting a little nervous just because we're about 40 minutes into the trip, roughly 30 miles or so, and we've already used 50 miles of battery, over 50 miles. So just do the math there. We have used 53 miles of battery and gone about 30, maybe 35 miles. So we're already trending well in the negative, but I expected that. If you do the math on that, we're tracking roughly to my formula, which is you will get 0.72% of the miles remaining according to the car. So far we're actually tracking quite well. Let's hope it stays that way. Really hoping for some downhills to hit so that we can recoup a little of that battery. So in preparation for the trip, I made sure to top off my tires on this car, Model 3 Standard Range Plus 2021. Tesla recommends 42 PSI front, 42 PSI rear. You can find that on the driver's side door jamb. So I inflated the pressures to 42 front, 42 rear. They were actually around 37, so that 5 PSI can really cost you on a highway trip like this. The goal is to minimize rolling resistance on this trip. That will maximize range. So another thing on this trip, when you're doing these highway trips, every little move you make is a huge game changer. The tire pressure, game changer. Another thing is minimizing the use of the stereo, minimizing the use of the AC. I'm fairly certain the AC draws from the master battery and not the 12 volt that's located up here. So, and obviously one charges the other anyways, right? The master battery tops off the 12 volt battery. So generally speaking, I think if you're using the AC, you're draining more of the car's master battery. So I'm trying not to do that. It says 68 degrees, and I checked the weather days in advance, and I thought to myself, I hope I can make the drive without AC, but you know, we're in California, the sun is always out, even when it's 70. If it's 70 degrees and it's sunny, this car is basically a greenhouse. It's just gonna cook you. So it feels like it's 80 plus in this cabin. I gotta turn on the AC periodically. Like right now, I'm just cooking in here. It's not comfortable. So right there, right? Just turning on the AC immediately reduces your range by a decent margin. So that's a bummer, but I gotta stay cool. So I'll do what I gotta do. If you don't own a Tesla or you haven't taken it on a road trip, one nice thing is, first of all, it's quiet, but there's no vibration either. So when you own a gas car, you don't realize how much the noise and the vibration through the car, the vibration of the engine through the steering wheel and your hands, like that affects you and that makes you tired, and you just don't have that in a Tesla. So I feel pretty refreshed whenever I take a Tesla road trip, just because it's so quiet, so peaceful, there's no vibrations to kind of rattle your bones. It helps, you know, every little bit helps, and I think these make great road trip cars, with the exception of having to stop and charge it. Obviously, that's not a lot of fun. I'll be curious to see what kind of supercharger we get. The charging speeds vary wildly. I've had as fast as 150 kilowatts, which is amazing. I've had as slow as 75, which is really slow. So depending on what kind of supercharger you get, that's also a big factor in your trip time. If you get 75 kilowatts, it'll take at least a half hour to charge even this little battery. 150 kilowatts, it will take half that time, 15, maybe 20 minutes. That really counts when you're on a road trip, and I'm on a schedule, by the way. I've got to be to LA by 4 o'clock. I'm meeting some people, and it's tight. It's very tight, so I'm really hoping that Supercharger is one of the faster ones and it's not super crowded, because I need to get in and out of there, full charge, max charge, fast as possible. So one last driving tip. This is probably obvious and applies to any car, but the faster you go on the highway, the more wind resistance against the car, the harder it has to work, and the more battery you'll use. Just to recap, my 3 tips for Tesla highway driving are: air up your tires to the recommended PSI, try not to use AC and all your kind of auxiliary electronics in the car if you can, or do it sparingly. And then lastly, try to keep your speed reasonable. All right, we're about an hour and 20 minutes into the drive here, and we're at 141 miles. So pacing about as expected still. Yeah, so hour and 20 minutes. We've used 110 roughly miles of battery. We definitely haven't driven anywhere close to that. Maybe 60, 70 miles. I can't really check all these things because I'm driving, but I think we're pacing pretty well. At the moment, the road has flattened out. Hey, look, there's a trailer of new Teslas there. Got a Model S Plaid on the back of that. Otherwise, a Model 3 and a bunch of Model Ys. I see a lot of that where I'm located. Tesla's very close to here at the factory, so I see Tesla trucks hauling 6 Teslas probably 10 times per day. Anyway, I think we're pacing pretty well. All right, just checking in here. We're at 136 miles of battery. We've traveled 96 miles, so that's actually pretty good. It's about roughly the 0.72-ish, 70% coefficient that I mentioned before. So I think we're tracking pretty well on pace. Whenever you navigate with the car, it tells you where you'll need to stop to supercharge along the way and where the chargers are. So it's laid out too for me: Harris Ranch and Bakersfield. Unfortunately, Harris Ranch is too soon and Bakersfield is too far away. I really need one kind of midway between these. I'm gonna have to do a deeper search and see if there is one. The joys of Tesla road trips. Aside from that, the car is amazing, quiet, comfortable, fast. I love it. Great road trip car. The supercharger stops do throw a wrench in things a bit, obviously, but hopefully I can make it work. So check back later. Another unfortunate thing is you can see here it tells you how much time it will take you to charge to full, and unfortunately the one it's routing me to that I think I have to stop at, Harris Ranch, it's going to take me 25 minutes to charge. That means it's a slower station. This one, which I can't make it to in Bakersfield, would only take 15 minutes. So anyway, the supercharging is working exactly the opposite of what I had hoped, but it is what it is. Obviously I have to make it work. I'm out here on the open road and I've got to stop and make it happen. So kind of a bummer there, but like I said before, we'll just make it work. When I exited the navigation and just did a supercharger search, you can see here, here's me. There's a ton of them on my route, as I had hoped. So hopefully, a lot of these are pretty close and they seem to be pretty much on my way. So I'm not sure why the nav didn't recommend a lot of these, but it looks like I can run this down to, you know, 20, 30 miles or more and still jump on a pretty good supercharger. But I gotta kind of go through and calculate. It looks like this one, Kettleman City, could be a good one. Obviously, Bakersfield is way too far, but I think Kettleman City, that could be a good one. Yeah, so this one looks like it could be perfect. So I've got about 75 miles of range left. This is 47 miles away. So oh boy, I should just make it. I'll basically have to run my calculation. 75 times roughly 0.7. I should be able to roll in there okay. This would be absolutely perfect. So I'll roll in there almost empty, supercharge, and then jump back on the road. Part of the fun, I'm sure I'll get used to it. Obviously, once I know my routine supercharger stops on the way to LA, future trips will be extremely easy. This is my first one, and I'm on a strict time schedule, so I'm a little more anxious than I might otherwise be, but I think we should be okay here. So I'll check in, hopefully, when we're at the supercharger in 44 miles. All right, almost to Kettleman City supercharger. It shows I'm gonna roll in now with 2% of charge, which is like 5 miles. Really cutting it close, and if that trend's worse, I'm screwed. And I had to turn the AC off to even get that level of charge when I arrive. If I put the AC on, it drops me down to like 1% of charge on arrival. So using the AC or not makes a lot of difference. And sadly, it's really hot out and I have no AC, which really sucks. And it's very hot in here. It's probably 90 plus in the cabin. Oh my God, man. So obviously I'm using a short range Model 3 for something it wasn't really intended for, but it is what it is, you know? I'm gonna make it work, and there's a little bit of anxiety in that. So I think I should just make it. 37 miles of range left, 21 miles to the station. That means, by my calculations, I'll roll in with probably anywhere from 3 to 5 miles. That's if we continue our current course of efficiency. If it gets worse and we hit a lot of uphills, I'm gonna roll in with 1 mile. So it's gonna be very, very close. And I'm sure I'm gonna get the warning saying, hey, the battery is way too low. Don't do this, please. So anyway, oh boy, getting a little nervous. If we can get to the supercharger, top it all the way up to 259, we are made in the shade. The second leg of the trip is shorter. So hoping that that will happen. And I'm sure there's a million people saying like, why didn't you just get the long range? Well, I'll tell you the reasons. I don't drive to LA or anywhere far very often these days. The long range is $10,000 more when you factor in the additional taxes. I don't want all-wheel drive. I don't want the 400 pounds of extra weight. I want the lightweight rear-wheel drive handling experience that this car gives me. And I don't need the extra power. This thing is a rocket. It's all I need. Yeah, I love the dual motor power. It's a ton of fun to drive, but I don't need it. I literally don't need all-wheel drive. Look at where I live. It's like this every day. So those are the reasons I didn't buy it. I stand by those reasons. The only real downside is right now, these long road trips. All right, we're getting into the white knuckle stage here. So I have 11 miles of range left and 4.3 miles to the supercharger. So I'm gonna roll in there with literally 5 miles to spare. I'm surprised I haven't gotten the warning yet saying, hey, don't run the battery this low, but I haven't. So anyway, 8 minutes, 4 miles away on 10 miles of charge. I think we'll definitely make it. I knew what I was getting into, obviously buying the short range, and I still think it can work for you on long trips. You just have to kind of be smart about it and be willing to maybe be a little anxious. But I think the key is get to know your routes really well. Get to know what is the optimal supercharger station to stop at each way. Make sure you've got some buffer zone here and there. Oh, what a beautiful sight. Look at this giant supercharger station with solar panels and everything. What a sight to behold. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Let's get a shady spot and cool down. We don't want the AC on. All right, let me go to the other side and get a nice shady spot. So, made it to the supercharger with 6 miles to spare. Little bit cutting it close, but you know, not too shabby, not too shabby. So 20 minutes, we've already doubled our range in 1 minute. It takes 20 minutes to fully charge this, so it's adding 250 miles of range in 20 minutes, which is fantastic. This is the fastest one I think I've been to. 170 kilowatts, not quite the 250 that it was saying in the Google Maps listing. 830 miles an hour of charge adds, which is fantastic. So got lucky here, got one in a perfect location, albeit a little far south, but super fast, so I should be in and out of here very quickly. And these are nice facilities. There's restrooms, and there's restaurants right across the street, so I'm gonna make myself comfortable, stretch my legs, make a restroom stop, and then we'll be back at it. So very, very excited I made it, and thanks for making the journey with me. It's a little more anxious when you're actually in the car and could be stranded. So anyway, hopefully you felt that, but all is well. All right, now this is annoying. So I got to about 170 miles of charge, and it says 35 minutes still remaining. It completely throttled me down to 47 kilowatts, 229 miles an hour, which is like a quarter of what it was doing. Let me pull into a different stall. So frustrating. What a joke. What an absolute joke. All right. No matter what I set it to, it's throttled me. See this? It's at 42 kilowatts. So it forces you to charge only to 80, although it looks like it'll charge all the way, but it throttles you down to 42 kilowatts an hour once you get towards the 80%. Really frustrating. I'm just gonna set the limit and let it go as long as it'll go. So frustrating. This totally screws my plan up. I typically only charge to 80% at Supercharger, so I haven't experienced this. Those of you who have a Tesla are probably saying, of course, that's the way it works, but you know, when I'm on a long road trip, I need that full charge to get out the rest of the way. 80% is not gonna cut it. So if it will slowly charge me the rest of the way, I guess I'll have to sit here and settle for that, but really frustrating. Lesson learned. This is how you learn and find out, is by doing. So I'm getting out of here. I'm not waiting. So it's gonna add 10 more miles of range over 11 minutes, a mile a minute. I mean, that's, look at that, 65 miles an hour. It adds 1 mile per minute. What an absolute joke. 246 is close enough. I'm stopping here. I'm out of here. All right, we're back. So I aborted the Supercharger with 246 miles of range. It'll still get me there. It will equate to about 175, 180 miles, which is more than enough. I need to go 167. I'll get there with maybe 15 or 20 miles to spare. You know, frustrating experience, but it shouldn't affect my trip very much. But, you know, lesson learned. And you may notice I've switched to my iPhone here, my iPhone 10, because my GoPro battery died. I mean, GoPro is a good camera for various things. That's why I have one. the battery life is pathetic, and I account for the battery life being pathetic. It lasted about half the time it normally does. I don't know why. So farewell GoPro. No more battery left for you. We'll just film the rest on an iPhone. So I'll do probably 2 more check-ins. One is I'm gonna hit some extreme mountains in probably about an hour or so that are gonna absolutely drain the battery like you can't believe. And then once I get over the mountains, it's an area called the Grapevine. Once you get through the Grapevine and come down the mountains, descending into LA, it's downhill for just dozens of miles. So I should pick up a ton of range on the downhill. Hopefully everything I lost, I'll pick back up. But that's about all the filming that's left. The main goal is can I get to a supercharger and actually make the second leg. I'm 100% sure I can do that now, but I do want to show you these other things, and then obviously I'll record the celebratory rolling into my destination successfully. So thanks for sticking with me, guys. Back to the road. All right, we've arrived at the most difficult part of the trip. So we're about 70 miles from LA. This part is known as the Grapevine. It's a mountain pass with some very steep inclines, very twisty roads. During the summer, it's common to see cars all over the side of the road who just cannot get up the hill and have overheated. The average car, gas car anyway, struggles badly to get up this thing. It is, I know a lot of people that are terrified and won't drive through it. You definitely have to keep your momentum going, and you've got to watch out for slow cars, which are everywhere. It can be really tough to keep the momentum going. In an electric car, that's less of a problem because you just have torque instantly on tap. So even if you get slowed way down, you can accelerate. You can accelerate really quickly up the hill. So I'm not worried at all about this car making it up. I think we'll just absolutely crush this this incline. But we're at 106 miles of range. You'll be amazed at how quickly this drops after we're at the top of the peak. You can see the mountains up there, several thousand feet of elevation up. The battery is gonna drop like an absolute rock. So on the plus side, once we get over the pass, it's mostly downhill as you head into LA. So I hope to recoup a lot of battery after we get over the pass using the regenerative braking. So my next update will be when we're at the top, about to head downwards. We'll see how much battery we lost climbing the mountain. It's gonna be a lot. See you there. We are making our way up, and it's pretty steep, but the car just goes up with such ease, it's unbelievable. So far so good. All right, we are pretty much at the top of the mountain heading down now. Thank God, because we're at 64 miles of range, as you can see. So just to do the math for you, we drove about 10 miles uphill and used 40 miles of range. So a 4-to-1 ratio, which is crazy, but that's about exactly what I expected. Now we're heading on a steady downhill pretty much all the way to LA and should get a lot of that back. So we're at 64 miles now, which is not enough range to get there, but I'm hoping that the range will basically freeze and not go down, or we'll gain a little bit back when we get to some major hills here. So, you know, it actually was about what I expected. 40 miles used to go 10. It's some serious uphill climbs. Just kind of one last note here. Cars really struggle, especially trucks, especially big rigs like that one. They struggle so badly to get up that hill, or that mountain pass, I should say. It's more than a hill. I mean, the Tesla, it's like a cartoon. It's so easy, it's comical. It's so unbelievably easy driving up that thing. It's literally like a joke. It was amazing. You could do top speed up that hill in this car. It's just, the acceleration is just like being on flat land. Just amazing. Great time to have a Tesla is driving up mountain passes. So easy, but it saps the battery a lot. All right, I've been faked out 10 times and started recording. I think this is the actual steep hill. So yes, this is it. We are at 44 miles of battery. Let's see how much we pick up when we get to the bottom. I'm hoping to gain, so you can see there's a sign here, 5% grade for 5 miles. I'm hoping to gain, I don't know, 5-6 miles of battery. Maybe wishful thinking, but let's see. We're at 44 miles now. Come on, regenerative braking, do your thing. All right, pretty disappointing. We did not pick up a mile of range on that downward grade, which is a real bummer. We're still at 44 though, so we didn't use any battery going, I don't know, about 5 to 7 miles. So that's good. So it was basically battery neutral. I had hoped to pick up charge. I've been on several really aggressive downward slopes and tight turns and actually picked up 2 or 3 miles of battery range. Didn't happen here, but at least we're still at 44 miles. So we're literally driving for about 10 minutes at 44. I'll take it, you know, freezing the battery life is still a win. And if you can see it out to the right here, one of the only interesting sights on the whole trip is Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia. Absolutely intense, amazing amusement park. It's one of the best in the country, if not the world. I've been there before. The coasters are extreme and amazing. They have some of the top coasters in the world. Well worth the stop if you're in the area. Just excellent, excellent amusement park. You've got to be a hardcore thrill seeker though. It's not for the faint of heart, but if you are, it's amazing. So here we are roughly 20 miles and 20 minutes later, and we're at 39 miles of charge. So we went from 44 to 39. So we used 5 miles of range to go almost 20 miles. That's pretty awesome. So again, the advantage of the downhill grades is really great. We didn't gain any battery back, but we slowed the rate of usage. Basically, we were using 1/4 of a mile for every mile of range that the car said, which is pretty fantastic. So it slowed the rate of usage considerably. Now we should hopefully make the journey. And this is what the traffic looks like as you near the LA area. This is actually nothing. I lived here for 16 years. This is very minor, but this is Sunday afternoon, early evening traffic. It definitely slows down quite a bit. So get to take advantage of the regen braking at least, because that's one pro. At last, I have arrived nearly 6 hours later, 342 miles later. I have 14 miles of battery left, so I still have to go to my hotel after this stop, but I should just be able to make it. Obviously, the Supercharger stop cheated me of 10 miles-ish, probably 6 or 7. That cuts it a little bit closer for me. So anyway, I made it on one charge. Hallelujah. I'm thankful. It was very stressful, but I did it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Always appreciate a like and a comment. And please subscribe if you want to see my future videos and probably a few more adventures like this one. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.